Samantha, Mona Lisa, and Ophelia, my love. Like I said, hottest panel I've ever moderated. You can see the material. Eh? This is the material we are working with today. So our panel today is going to be talking in highlight reels only, not in depth, about the concept of womanhood in Uganda and how Ugandan feminists are organizing and some other interesting things around how do we hold space both to grieve what could have been in terms of our dreams for organizing and also the possibilities of what our dreams can be. And I did not, when I saw these questions, I was like, these look like thesis things. Like, this should be a Dr. Foyomungu writing us. And so, since we are decolonizing knowledge, I just wanted to first start by asking the room a question. Just shout out what comes to your mind. What is the first thing you think about when you think about womanhood, or just think about being a woman? So just shout.
Embodiment.
Mm-hmm.
Sisterhood.
Mm-hmm. Faith. Okay. Performance. Okay. Great. Humility. Wow. Okay. We don't know how. Okay. Um. Anything else? Struggle. Okay. Love. Okay. I think unpaid care work. That's labor. Yeah. And so, to our panelists who will have an opportunity to tell you their name, their favorite color, or something. And just how you situate yourself in this conversation around womanhood. Yeah. Just your own personal context around the word woman or the concept of womanhood.
Sisterhood, I think. Hello, friends. So my name is Ophelia Kemitsha. I grew up in Uganda, Kampala. I am a feminist by choice and a lawyer by training.
By force.
And for a living, I do whatever works. My favorite color right now is pink, but it changes because, bisexual. So, I think when I think about, I think when, Lara, focus.
Exactly.
So I think when I think about womanhood, I think it's difficult for me to understand what womanhood means because I grew up in a, I grew up with a lot of women, and I went to school with women, and so for a long time I did not know that I was a woman. I'm like that person who I won't say their name, who says they didn't know that they were black until they went to America. You know those people, yeah? So I'm also like that. I was like, hey, I wish the person was like, hey, I think you think I'm different. So I think it's something that I discovered pretty late actually because my standard for excellence for everything was women. Um, and I think now, with all the learnings that we have learned from trans and gender diverse communities about gender, I had to really sit with myself and be like, am I really a woman for real, for real? And I guess the answer is it's complicated. What I know is that I love women and that I decline to answer on advice of counsel. what I can say is that I love women and that I am interested in women's liberation, and that all the work that I have done and want to do um, centers the liberation of women first, and thinking of it as necessary for the liberation of all of us.
Oh, nice question. My name is Mona Lisa Akintole Ujelaye. I work at the Ugandan National Trans Forum. Now the emphasis in the trans, right? But my best color is, you say favorite, right? Black. But sometimes when I say black, they say black is not a color. I'm like, it's black. Yes. Some people do confuse me and say black is not a color. Womanhood or woman, I think for me, I think like Ophelia, it's been hard for me to define who that is, right? Because back then, I think we were given a lot of choice and space to be whatever and whoever we wanted to be without the labels. I think even the woman word must have come from the white person to say now this is male, this is woman, this is man. And so to define it is really hard, but I'll try to bring it close to home in the queer space where I identify most, is to say that as a woman and a queer person and a GNC person, womanhood is a struggle, first of all, to be accepted. Who gets actually to even be called a woman? Who passes to be a woman for the trans community, right? And so I'm always sitting with conversations around then how do I define myself? And I think that for me then defines womanhood. It's something hard to decipher, but I also over time have learned that because we are in a world that wants to describe us and labels to it, I will describe it as a woman is somebody, as a trans woman, let me just be specific, is somebody that is defying the odds of what was meant to be normal between the male and the female. And to say, then where do I fit in that bracket where I don't belong? Because then me, I do traverse the description of womanhood. Yeah.
The weapons are being formed against my throat, but but have you guys heard how we are such a feminist cliche that rings? No, I was looking at, and I was like, I think who? I'm seeing everybody's like, yeah, what should I bling? Anywho, my name is Samantha Inembabazi. I'm an artist. That's the best way I describe myself as an artist. Um, my best color, it keeps shifting. Now, funny, I grew up hating pink. And I think it goes back to how I'll explain what womanhood is for me, because I grew up hating pink because if you find that a pink thing at home, you know, I bought it for you. Even if it's... So I told myself, I like black, I like gray. I was like defiance in my head. And up to now, my mother will tell you she hates, that girl hates pink. But lately, as I enter my soft feminine era, I'm falling in love with pink again, with purple, with yellow. So it's not very cloudy in my life anymore. And what is womanhood to me? I think for me, I'll just put in one statement, and it would say, to define is to limit. Because when they asked the question, when Sunshine asked, everybody had so many different things to say. And so for me, I'd say womanhood for me is that thing that I can't, like how I feel or how anybody feels. And the freedom to say, today I could say womanhood is community, it's strength. Like, you know what, womanhood is being okay being alone. Like, community, I don't want that anymore. Eh, who is that? Do you have like a timekeeper? Is that how they do their thing? I'm very confused. Anyway, yeah. So for me, I feel like even taking away even like saying, refusing to define womanhood in itself for me is saying that is what womanhood is to me. Yeah, because like I said, growing up, there's all these ways that a woman should behave, and so I was very intentional on being defiant. I don't know if any of you was there for my butch era, but it was like, I was, it was just me being very defiant. And now I'm like, but no, you can be soft. And softness doesn't mean it attracts harm or pain. You can be soft and be powerful. So for me, it's to define is to limit when I think about womanhood. I just want everybody to have like their own definition of what womanhood means. And especially now that we have, like these amazing ladies have said, we enter now into the gender, sexuality, expression, all these other English words. But at the end of the day, yeah.
Yes, Samantha. The mic is working. The weapons, they are succeeding. Thank you. Thank you so much. The problem with feminists, you're too clever. Now my questions, I'm thinking, right, I'm like, now do I jump to question number 3? What happens here? But I want to start from where Ophelia had mentioned that feeling like loving women and investing your labor and your work into the liberation of women, and ask the question around how we reconcile our colonial legacies of harm and extraction from women. I know you, as a lawyer, you've done like about like the work around like land rights, for instance, or women's economic rights. Right. Please don't unpack the word rights. Not now. Okay. But you understand what I mean. How do we reconcile those legacies of extraction and violence and the work around liberation that you are doing, that all of you are doing? That is the question. But we will start here, Madame Loet.
That's a great question. So, let me first tell you a story. So, I was at school, adult education. They said, go and do a master's. I said, let me go and do a master's. Maybe this way people give me money if I do a master's. And then I came across this paper that was talking about how the push for land rights and for women's kind of access to land and registration was part of a bigger neoliberal project to alienate indigenous communities from their homelands by now subdividing every piece of land that it belongs to this one person, and to subvert kind of traditions around sharing and kind of community ownership. I remember sitting in that library and being like, so now, has my whole life been a lie? So I think that it's really jarring when you see some things from the perspective of, from kind of like from a higher perspective. Of course, I want women to have access to land. And when we were growing up, I remember kind of the prevailing issues around making sure that women were able to till the land that they were on. Karagwa, are you distracting me? Till the land that they were on without without being pushed off. I remember many stories of like, this woman, even those Nigerian movies, this woman's husband dies. Now they send her home with her children. Then they're on the street, selling ice water. You remember those things? Pure water. So, but when you look at it from the other perspective and from these kind of prevailing narratives about ownership that alienate us from each other, then it becomes a bit complicated. So here is the short answer that I don't have. I think that our push for women's so-called empowerment cannot be divorced from our wider struggles for decolonization, for climate justice, for you know that list of things that we are fighting for. So I think that all the things are linked, And sometimes we may have to walk and chew gum at the same time. Having said that, I think that we are going to have to divest from some projects that we thought were going to save us. I think there are things that we thought were going to be the thing, like have women having money in their pockets, and we realize it's not that simple. And I'm not sure what we should be fighting for yet. I haven't yet figured that out. If I knew it, I would call all of you tomorrow and say, guys, I found it. But what I can tell you is that the direction we are going in is not the one. This kind of bifurcation of our identities and overemphasis on biology and casting of us as constant victims waiting for some white person to come and save us, not a real thing. Not a real thing. This idea that we can, unfortunately, and it pains me to say this, and I'm telling you, it's so painful for me to say this, but that we can remove ourselves from the wider society and create our own utopias. Yes, Lara, I'm talking to you, is untenable. We're going to have to find struggles that can link all of us. And we have to be serious about identifying who our enemy is, not mistake our enemies for friends or our friends for enemies, and to build, painful as it is, broad-based movements for like much wider change. It does nothing, or it does little. Enemies are winning. It does little for us to have women have more money in their pockets if all that money is going towards them living hand to mouth, having to pay school fees and pay healthcare fees and pay this and pay this and pay this and do the shift at work and do the shift at home and do the shift in the bank and do the, it's not generative. We have to push for solutions that can cover more of us and not depend on this woman who manages to climb up that neoliberal ladder.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, Ophelia, the house is on fire. I want to amend the question because Ophelia happened. So, you remember the first question, the question she was responding to? So I want to amend it. Because Ophelia has brought up something that I was going to ask around how we've been organizing, right? Within NGOs, within women's rights organizations, within LGBTI organizations, within climate justice. I mean, mention an issue and there is an NGO for it, maybe 1700, right? But we know now, more than ever, that that mode of working does not serve us. It's harming us. Like Ophelia was saying, like we have to figure out ways to work together to connect all our issues, right? So my amendment to that question is how can feminist movements build a unified grassroots, agenda, political power really, that is not dependent on the NGO industrial complex. And I know all our money is sitting on that table, so I know there's discomfort around this. So all your air tickets and per diem and snacks at Onomo, they are right there. So I want us to sit in that discomfort and also hear from Mona Lisa and Samantha, and then maybe like two of you in the room. So prepare your responses. Look at me nicely.
Yeah, tough one, right? Because even as we're sitting here, it meant that somebody had to do the background logistical work, right? The way the movement started, and I think the way movements start is that people are sitting at home on kitchen tables, in WhatsApp groups, over a party, and you talk about issues that are really pertinent to you and that you're suffering from in a very informal way. But then we are caught up in the bandwagon of you have to have legal registration to be accepted to do this work. And I think we should be able to confront and have conversations around that as feminists to say how do we then organize differently. I might not have the answer right now because then all the organizing that has happened over time has had to have the money factor to it, right? That even when people need to meet at my home, you have to send them that K for transport. Others, they will not come, right? But it's to go back to how did we begin to organize? And then have to borrow that knowledge that we have for so long forsaken to think that this is the only way we can organize. So let's go back to a revisitation of that. And like what we are doing in this space, we are creating the ground for ourselves. The pop-ups are coming up, right? And so we are thinking of new ways on how to do this work. And maybe next time the liberation happens, it will be in my home. And it will be free of charge. Yes, I can invite you to my 2-bedroom place. Right? Because then even conversations of 5-10 people, it is moving a movement. And I think to also limit ourselves with, I hate when we have to see impact by the numbers of people that we've reached. So then it takes away from the humanity of how we do this work. To say that you are only going to be seen as impactful in an area of doing this work is how many people have you reached? But even that one person you reach is very important because then that one person reaches the other one person. So let's do away with the numbers. I think we should leave that for the HIV department, right? No, I'm being very serious around that because for you to seem to have a room of impact is they have to be 30, they have to be 40, but 2, 5, that's just a beginning for you. And I think the other thing is to introduce new people to this feminist work and how to think differently on how to do that. So this conversation is also opening us to that reality. How do we then break away from this model that is crashing anyway to find alternative ways of working? And that is an invitation to all of us to think, how do we then do it differently, right? It's not just about these 4 panelists here, the 3 of us or the 4 and all of us in the room, but it's then to think of how then am I going to be able to movement build in a space where we know the resources are shrinking and still be able to reach your community. So those conversations are very important. And how you do it is online, informally in a bar, over a drink as you're sitting, your Hennessy or whatever. You're talking about Mona Lisa who didn't eat yesterday. And I think that is very important, and that's where our power is for now, because that model is falling. And I'm glad it did.
So, I I come from a community that, first of all, I sort of ran away from active organizing because of this whole conversation of NGOizing our lives and all that. And then guess where I went to? The art movement. And then before I knew it, thank you very much. Before I knew, like, when I ran away, I was like, you know what, I'm a passionate person. Don't talk to me about these things. Let me go. Then they started. Now we need to write. People are not going to pay for the work. Oh, there's this call for artists. And I was like, but I don't want to talk about nuances and criticisms anymore. Like, so for me, I feel like the first step is to name it, to realize that we actually have an issue, you know. And I come from a community, the queer community in Uganda. If anybody knows how we started out, it was just people meeting at Speak, spending their money to organize, yeah. And then so recently so another thing I do, I edit, I'm the editor at Kuchi Times Media Group. So I was going through, like, we are archiving things, and I found pledges for the first ever beach pride that happened, and how everybody had, like, you take like a pledge card home, then you write how much money you're willing to contribute towards the pride. But even as I mention and I think about these things, I realize how, if I'm being honest, they're rooted in privilege. Because you can't give what you do not have. Yeah? We want to organize. We want to come to a normal almost every day, but is it realistic? Can we afford it? if we say we're going to go back to community-centered organizing, we're talking about women some women are, because it's a systemic issue more than an individual issue. I'm looking at transgender persons, transgender women, or even people that struggle with perceived queerness, who it's obvious that they are queer women. How does employment look like for them? Do they have the money to resource their movement? Can they, if they say now we're going to, if the big back is in good jobs equals good education, what happens to people whose schools chase out, who cannot finish? What does that look like? So even while we dream for our movement, I feel like it's important for us to realize the systemic barriers that would sort of make it difficult, not impossible, but difficult for us to achieve these things. Another thing, when Lara was talking about how there's a group teaching people in the village how to make briquettes, hilarious. But it makes like, how do we involve everybody in the community? Feminism is so elitist, I'm sorry to say this. Yeah. It's the way, especially, okay, or the interpretation of feminism has been made such an elitist club that my grandmother, who refuses my baby niece from getting married, is the biggest matriarch I know. But because she doesn't say words like theory of change and nuances and and all these things, I have to go and teach her how to be a feminist. Whereas I should be learning from her how to be a feminist. So for me, I feel like as we think about how we have professionalized activism, and my name is so and so, and I'm a programs manager of this organization, and so like how we have, yeah, but no, it is what we are doing because it's how it is, yeah. So to understand that all these things have to coexist, we do need, as much as it's important for us to take a seat back, we need to understand what those barriers look like, why it's not possible, why we forever need people that will sit and write these proposals, because the people whose rights are forever going to be conversations of debate and conversations of whatnot. And while we are sitting in here and holding these microphones and speaking all this English, we need to realize that we need to involve people that are not like us. Because these are people who make the decisions, these are people who have the community influence that we seek, these are people who have the voice of the ears of people. For example, who of us has ever thought about talking to their community Nabachala? And Nabachala is the LC, the woman version. Imagine if that person was a feminist. How many domestic violence cases would find, So, and it makes more sense in Uganda. To be Luzungu, there's a bit of too much English, and to understand who are the other actors that maybe we're not bringing onto the table to actualize what else. Like, it has to be a multifaceted NGO language. But yes, it has to be a multifaceted approach to realize that even when we dream big and say we need to go back to making it kumbaya, we need to realize that because of certain laws, because of the context, because we have not gone as far as involving Mothers Union in these conversations, the church has power. So we live in Uganda, or Africa, religion has power. Have we had these conversations? Have we told them how we have this conversation that Jesus might have been a feminist because his friends were sex workers? I don't know. We need to tell them about these things.
I've had this conversation or brought it up with some feminists, and it's been, I guess, uncomfortable, and it should be. But I really think the beginning of true freedom is to remove hierarchies. So the thing, we spend a lot of time in determining who is above who is founder, yeah? We want to register and become the ED, and that takes away, because in that, it produces those power dynamics that we like to think that because I know the politic, I'm above it. I think some comrades like to believe, all of us have, erroneously, like, it has come up in our minds, but it's not. And for as long as we create environments where that abuse of power thrives, because we are only human beings, yeah? So I've always thought the first thing is to remove hierarchies and view each other as like, Lorna, you're my buddy, and you're my community, and that's it. And that brings me to the other thing about I hate using this card, DWAT, but that's the language that we have now. So, deprofessionalize, yeah. And all of these things are important. And I think it's so beautiful to see just myself and other comrades how we have evolved, you know. I knew people who, when we were younger, were like, the heroes were Hillary Clinton, God forbid, or like Condoleezza Rice, you know. And of course, we have now seen that that's very, very bullshit, you know, aspiration. Um, but I think that we still exist within us systems that kind of, you know, again, going back to we're only human, yeah? So if I have a title, someone was saying, hey, programs manager, that title comes with with it, yeah, is attached as a false self-worth that I think we each seek, unless you constantly reject it. So, and I'm not saying, but Lona, this is not about it. But I've always thought about it even in the school system, yeah? So, career students, go get a master's, go get a PhD, because again, you want to be the woman who has a PhD, and sometimes the first woman in the family, and that's like, oh my, it's not, guys, it's not about, guys, this is not about Lona, and we need dissertations in the, but I'm saying that while that does, I'm not saying that we should stop seeking that, because it's important. We have, as the systems are right now, imagine if we didn't have some of this work has been built on the dissertations that the learners have written. But I'm just saying that has to cease. Sorry, guys, I'm not Lona. You know this. That has to cease to be a thing that we feel that it lends us like some kind of worth, that we have to believe that I, Minsima, without all the titles, without the writer, without this and this, without in which family I'm born, without how I look, without my incredible sense of self, that I am, that I'm worthy. I'm worthy with all of that. So I think, I don't have the answers to that, but we can build through, raising critical consciousness. I think that it's so important, education for the critical masses, like Ferry says, because then that kind of helps us to unlock that conditioning that makes us believe, we're not above it, even when we know better, even when we are feminists and we know that theories. But I think that if we do that, then if you believe that you're worthy without all the titles, then you can't say that you're going to teach the woman in the village how to make, because you're just like, no, I'm actually going to learn from them, So that's one of it. I don't want to take a lot of time, but I feel like I already am. So I'm going to just really go fast as I can. Emancipate ourselves from the capitalist conditioning of, and that is why. But what I'm thinking with this is that, so we have to come to a normal. And I love being here. Thank you, guys. I mean, look at us, in this place. It's beautiful, whatever lights. But we don't always have to be at a normal. Yeah? We can be, yes, in Mona Lisa's 2-bedroom house, or someone's 1-bedroom, or or we can be in the compound. We can use the public parks. Remember, there's a time we held feminist church in that public park in the city, so we have to all to think like, let's go for drinks and talk about all of that. Is very, because now the women in Nakasero market, even if you say I'll buy for them drinks, like it's all the same shit. Like, so while we can't meet at Onomo, it has to be, and Sunshine told me a valuable lesson about it, because there's a time when we're really, really getting together to like thingy feminist church, we root it, and I'm saying like, oh, we don't have money for snacks, whatever, and like the very obvious old concept of potluck, she was like, no, everyone can carry a snack if they can. And that is like that has to be a thing that we constantly remind each other that can be, and we don't have to do it like in the NGO, like have to take a flight, and flights are nice, but yeah. and then of course someone talked about already, like just connecting the struggles or our comrades, where those women are doing the work. Samantha's grandmother is doing work. I know my grandmother, who passed, was like big matriarch, doing things in the community and whatever. Just meeting them, we're going to learn from them, and then them learning from us as well. And then I think about also giving, not giving in the sense of like, charity, yes, and like but give, and not just about money too, but giving our time, because when we say we're going to stop to de-NGO night, that means we're going to do heavy lifting once. That means you're going to get up every morning on a Saturday to come for feminist chat, and you're like, damn, I would rather be sleeping. That means that you're going to organize, to do the back-breaking work of booking the venue and carrying the mats and bringing the pillows and, and reading the text and, breaking it down. So we have to be ready to do that. And that is also giving. That's giving with everything that we have for, what we can.
This is directed mostly to what Samantha discussed, or the whole point of inclusion, and what I swear I've been struggling with the whole point of trying to include our oppressors in this thing. And I'm not saying that's what Samantha said, but like where she talked about of the mothers union people and church, like so I always think to myself, how, like, yes, these people are part of the community and they have the power to navigate a lot of things that could simply politically change, because like my takeaway from that whole situation is that yes, we keep preaching to the converted, and few of us are not going to. It's going to be a it's a tough process for us, the few, because as we keep on making jokes, sometimes we keep on making that joke in a feminist community that we are actually like the 2% in like the whole community. We are the anti-political thing. So, and then I think to myself, so the church, yes, it has power. How are we going to now convince those people who have built their entire system on oppressing us to get an upper hand? How are we now going to convince them that, oh, now we matter and we should, because we are basically dismantling what they stand for as a system, and then we are telling them, oh, okay, now this ideology, feminism, this is what we think, and we should include everyone. We are basically dismantling everything. That's why even when you look at this whole pop issue, whereby the LGBTQ plus community keeps pushing for marriages to be recognized by that, because there are still very many Catholics that are queer persons, very many, and they are attached to their religion, and they keep pushing for the Pope to want to open. But the Pope keeps emphasizing, no, I can only give you my blessing. However much they seem that they are liberal, but they are going to say, no, I can only give you my blessing, but for us in our religion, we don't condone your stuff. Basically, that's what they are saying. So I'm saying, how do we include those women? Also, still other women and people who have the power to control the politics, to shift in our direction. Now, like those who are sitting in parliament, they are doing nothing, but they have the power to, and they have the power. And if we have to make them lean into our ideology, they have the power to. But do you really think those? Okay, I'm a bit of a pessimist when it comes to those people, because like, do you really think class Annette, who has her husband at home, like, even that's the pushback they were giving us when it came to the sexual offences bill. You think class Annette, who is paying, she's earning what, 20M from Parliament, but she's paying the housemaid 50M to do all that, 50 shillings to do all that work. Do you really think she's going to listen to me, Shiba, who's going to come? Oh, I have something that I have to tell you about. First of all, those people's ideologies that just because I'm older, I know more, and just because I'm in this position of power, it's because I am better than you, and that's why I'm in this position of power. They have religion backing them in their ideologies. They have culture backing them in their ideologies. How are we going to reconcile with that specifically?
Yeah. I would like to bring back the conversation to the panel and give each of you about 3 minutes. I don't want to re-traumatize Ophelia by telling the story of the sexual offences bill, so I will not. But I think that the lesson for me as now a retiring activist is that not all the work is not all the work is for all of us. Not all the work is for every one of you in this room. Because for me, I think by the time when we were doing health financing work, I was this close to throwing forks at MPs. I'm like, why am I begging you to allocate financing to reproductive health? But there are people who can sit in rooms with those people and they try and make sense. Maybe they give you an additional 2% of the health. But it's for you to recognize that those questions are important to ask and to also know that not all the work is for all of us, right? And I think within the abortion movement, there's always this conversation around how anti-rights movements are very patient. They will be like, you believe in a woman's right to choose. It's okay. I can. They have that, desire to just engage and persevere and meanwhile, the abortion activists are just like, yeah, fuck that, right? Let's start an abortion fund and an abortion clinic. So it's very important for us to recognize where our energies are most needed. And as a young person, as an older person, as an elder, and then to use that, that opportunity to do that. I think it's Adrienne Mary Brown who talks about transforming yourself to transform the world. For the things for you you're able to do and the work that you can commit to, like Edna was saying, if that work is finding a text for us to read, if that work is going and supporting girls get pads in schools, or it's very important for us to stay grounded in the work that we care about and not to deplete our energies in the work that is depleting us, right? I will not belabor what Edna was saying. I will come back to the panel and ask one last question. Okay, maybe two, but it will be one. One of the things that we have seen, and for me, personally, I'm always involved DMs and voice notes about every device feminine person that I find on the internet, the podcast girlies, the bloggers, oh my God. Just the amount of rhetoric of misogynistic and homophobic rhetoric. So we know that is a repackaging of misogyny, and it is now, it's very expensive, by the way. The girls be going on getaways, they are tighty at Sheraton. It's serious business. It's capitalism persevering. And we know that it's harming the work that we are doing. So what are some of the ways we can, I guess, respond in this moment? But also knowing that that is also tied largely to the anti-rights movement. So how can we respond in that about this particular thing in this moment? And also, finally, how do we care for ourselves and each other, right? I will start with Sunny.
If I don't take anything today, I will take, not all the work is for all of us. because I come from I would say multi-layered. I organize as a feminist, I organize as a lesbian, and they're not usually always the same thing. So I've found that alternative organizing, I could take it wherever I can get it. So, like, for me, it's sort of like layered. How do why those kids have a budget? They really have a budget. Damn, I was seeing how much Nara Smith is worth. She's worth like 27 million US dollars. I was like, how do I start cooking a shabe from scratch? I've been I've been thinking about it, and yeah, and it's very intimidating, especially when you think about it. When you think about the resources, when you think about how we are sort of like 1,000 years behind because of the things that the system is set up in their favor. Let's start there. So the system, the community, everything, there's sort of been like and unfortunately the fact that we are not vampires, we don't have muscle memory of how it was before colonialism or before all these other things. So we do not have like the community doesn't remember. So we've sort of been sold this dream that this is the thing. Unfortunately, we don't remember. So because we don't remember, we remember just from, I confuse my BC and my AD, but we know what I'm saying. Someone came, someone died, something like that, yes. So we remember only after the death of something like that. So because of that, it's sort of the, I'd call it, yeah, I'll use the language, a gospel truth, because it is how it's supposed to be. And so for me, I think that how do we counter is conversations like this, is organizing our own, again, I'd consider feminist church high tea. Yeah, I do. So it's organizing things that, our things, like, I mean, they're organizing their things. So let's also organize our things. Then start our own podcast. There's a podcast I like. It's called, I'm going to butcher it. So, yeah, and then also, yes, and then also casting. So Kuch Times has contracted casting to also start a new podcast for like these same conversations. So if everybody has something to say, let us also have something to say before they start taxing podcast equipment, because because everybody has something to say at this point. I'm just saying that. But also one thing I've learned, like I've said, I come from multi-layered organizing. Is it's not important to invest our time dispelling what they're saying. Let's say our own things. Like, so yes, I'm not going to start a podcast saying, oh, do not be a trad wife. No, I'll start a podcast saying, back with me as a lesbian with 8 cats. I don't like my own thing. Like, let us, because we don't have the time. Time is a resource to start. How will we put out our information if it's going to be an unsanctioned sort of like rap battle? It's a best. I'm an artist. That's where my mind goes. So it's going to be like an unsanctioned rap battle where they come and say this and we come and say this and we come and say that. Let us what we want to say. Let us say what we want to say. Let us organize it. Let us focus our energies on that. Let us another thing I'd think about is, one of the I'd be really worried, and then I go on TikTok, and I keep on telling myself the kids are going to be all right. Like, we are so worried, but the kids are going to be fine. Let me tell you something. There's a law, but have you seen the queers? People fight on TikTok live. People like so the kids are going to be fine. And I think for us to, under that background of the kids will be all right, is to also learn from the kids. Like, why don't they care? It's not like they can't read or they can't. What is that thing? What is that? Where is that carefreeness coming from when it comes to the kids? And the baby queers, I call them baby queers. What are they? What is that? So what can we do with them? How do we also have this cross-generational organizing? The word cross-generation was ruined in like 2004 when they had a whole cross-generational sex thing at MOOC. But I mean it nicely today. Yeah, there are songs. I mean, like cross-generational organizing. How do we do that? Because we have the lab. We have the things we want to say. We sort of like we have the knowledge. They have knowledge as well, but we have things to say. They have medium to say. How do we work with that synergy? We have money. They are in school. How do we do what do we do? What do we say? Okay, how much is podcast equipment? $5,000. okay, how do we contribute to ensure, or who has a studio, who has, Critical Times has a studio, you can come and record. What are the resources that we have within ourselves before we look at how resourced the guys that won't be named are? What are our resources as a community, and how can we tap into those already existing resources to do what we want to do? I feel like then is how we sort of walk through this thing, because I tried when the head speech had just started. I don't know. I tried every article. I would go on Kuchu Times and write, and I realized, guys, it's not working out. It's really. I became so quarrelsome, so bitter. I didn't like myself, and I said, you know what? Let me just come up with Let me just do my own thing. So you have this information. I'll come out and say, what do you mean queer? This is an African. This is a history. This is what says. This is what Say my own message. Ignore what they're saying, and then because they're focus my energy on what I know, what I can do. Yeah, that's how I feel.
Yeah, I feel like before actually taking on this question, I was thinking around. I love the soft girl era, right? I loved how bougie that sounded. But then I had to go back and read and research. What does this actually mean, right? And so it then fits into the patriarchal colonialist way of undermining and degrading the work that women have done for so long, right? And so it even diminishes the work that working class women do within community. And so I had to do a rethinking. And I realized that I had to re-educate myself. So part of what I am doing right now that we should all do is to then read more about what does that actually mean, right? Or we are just riding with the new words because it sounds so bougie. And I was, oh girl, where are you going? To Dubai to shake my ass on a yacht. But it is not what it is. So I had to dig deeper. And I think the other way that we have been able to do it is in this very room, is to say that people that have for so long been or are going to be excluded out of these conversations are GNCs and trans persons. What do you mean by divine femininity and all these things? Where do we belong? As who are demonized, right? And so I had to do a rethinking around, do I want to really be divine anyway? I am not seeking that. So, yes, before. So, yeah, I had to do really a deep, what do we call it, excavation. I use extractivism, those words. I don't want to exclude you. I'll be better. So really, just also doing that and also bringing the people in the room that are affected, like I'm saying, what is happening in this room, to have people at the core of these issues speak for themselves. Because then that is where consciousness raising happens, to start to think about it. Because I can think if I didn't get this invitation to speak, I wouldn't get to understand this soft girl thing. I would continue to do it, thinking it's an easy thing to do. And I think I would just sum it up with the care aspect so that I don't come back to speak, all right? Right? And so for the ways I've been able to care for myself is to, like to say, everything can't be done by me. I'm choosing to give myself rest. And I think I also felt very, oh, why am I shaking? I also felt very, do you know when you feel like you're letting the movement down, when you choose to rest and all those things? People called me when I had to go to the diaspora, come back, Mona Lisa. And I'm like, hey, I'm really needed. So then I had to also now be back. But I also understand that this workload can be pushed by many of us, not just one person. So me relaxing in my home and taking care of myself, I know my sister got my back, right? And so I think that is one way I've been able to care for myself. And then people do not shun away from sex. That has really made me grounded. And then, have you seen somebody that walks out of their home and they haven't had a good time? They're the most bitter people. So really, let's also think about how do we pleasure ourselves? Because then it starts from inward. Before you give this energy out, how are you being fed? Stay fed. It's very key. Because this work then means that you have to come into this space with your wholeness. Yeah? And it is good. Don't shy away from it. So yeah, those are the two ways of being able to care for myself and saying, I will not do all this heavy lifting. There will be people out there.
Thank you. I have the fortune of speaking last, so I'm going to say my own things. Because they've said all the important things. I wanted to pick up a point that Edna made about refusing hierarchies and said that refusing hierarchies should not mean refusing leadership. So the problem and refusing hierarchies should not mean refusing leadership. It's Jay, what's the problem? You don't want to listen to me. Refusing hierarchies is about, I think Edna put it very well, holding onto the label and using it to beat other people over the head, holding power, holding money. That's the reason we're refusing hierarchies. But that does not mean that we refuse leadership because all of us have work to do. So everybody must do their work, and in the places that you're able to lead, should lead and take initiative. Like Edna was saying, if you're the one bringing the mats, you bring the mats, be on time. So I wanted to just make that proviso that it's important that we create egalitarian systems where we can share power, responsibility, and accountability while not trying to create hierarchies that are not generative. Sometimes we may have to create hierarchies for the purpose of a specific thing so that there is like a flow of information and responsibility, but those should not be cast in stone, like someone who has now put up posters that don't have the word vote on them, right? So, now, if you know, you know. I also wanted to pick up Shiba's point about class and about, I like that Samantha talked about going to Mother's Union. And trust me, feminists went to Mother's Union. Me, I know the feminists went to Mother's Union. They went to Mother's Union, but someone told us a story. I don't remember, I won't say the person's name because I don't want to, but they told us a story of how they went to Mother's Union. And they started there, they infiltrated it, and they were inside. And then one day they had a session about pleasure and sex, and they helped women locate their clitoris. They were not allowed to go back. So, I'm just saying, at your own risk, okay? At your own risk. But Shiba's point about class, I think, is extremely important. I talked about mistaking your enemies for friends and your friends for enemies. There are people that we thought were our friends because they were women, and because they were women in leadership, women in whatever. However, in my language, they say, the language you use when you're asking people to come and help you, not to step on the matoke to become alcohol. There's that point when you're like, Bunja Munyambe, guys, please come and help me. We are making alcohol. There, everyone is welcome. But when that alcohol is ready and it's time to pour, you use a different language. eh? That when it's time to pour that alcohol, it's a different conversation. Now you're like, who should we invite? Even last time she wasn't even stepping with energy. She's not coming. So those women that we have sent into power, me personally, like Sunshine said, not everyone is going to do all the work. I set them free. I sent them over to go the other side and participate in our operation. That's all I have to say about that at this point. And then about the question that you actually asked. About divine feminine, I think Samantha put it really well. I think we should not tire of doing the work that we are doing. Tony Ked Bambara says we have to make the revolution irresistible. And so I think we have to play the long game. The long game. And we also don't, luckily, we're not vampires, but luckily we have many people around us who are here 20 years ago, who are here 40 years ago, and who can tell us that the things that we are taking for granted now were things that were very hard, that were fought for and had won. So it may appear that we are losing because divine feminine and somehow natural hair is no longer a thing again. I don't know what's going on. It's a mess. But there are so many things that we have gained, even as we have lost. So we should not we should As Jordan says, we can lose many things, but we should never lose hope. But counter-revolution is real. And you have to keep your eyes open at all times. Because anytime there might be enough funding in the ranks, you have to keep your eyes open like this, like this, like this. Because they are, I'm telling you, it comes so quickly. One day you're talking about rest as revolution. Next time you're like, but this rich woman who is posting about rest as revolution, what is she resting from? What has she done to require this rest as revolution? You're like, one day you're talking about rest as resistance, and then one day you're like, but what are you resisting? What do you think about decolonization? You think all of us are moving in this direction? Next thing you know, African Studies Department is 20 white people. Anyway, so keep your eyes open. Counter-revolution is real, and by the time the CIA files for this time what's the word called? Declassified. We'll be like, and it will be, too late. So you have to keep your eyes open. Then in terms of care, I think I've been caring for myself by writing, but I wanted to say that one of the ways that we can care for ourselves, which sounds counterproductive, I guess it sounds strange, ironic, but I think that one of the ways that we can care for ourselves is by finding ways to provide the material conditions for other people around us to be well. Because it's hard to enjoy your money if you're anyone who has it. You know what I mean? So I think we have to really invest in systems that can create better material conditions for more of us, because then we'll be more likely to enjoy the things that we have. The food tastes better when you're eating it with 10 people than when you're burning it in your own house. Yeah, those are the points I have. Thank you.
Even mine might be a bit counterproductive, but I'm very choosy about who I let into my little world. I will block, I will unfriend, I will do like I'm very choosy about my little world, and it's important to me that I protect that space. And then another way that I've found important to care for yourself is like Mona said, it's very unfortunate the example I'm going to give, but Jay and I lost someone, and the very day that person died, they got somebody in their job, they put somebody in the job to find out how they died. That person has their job up to now, 3 years later. They found out, but still, like, all I'm saying is, like, I've learned early not to be a martyr. I like to, yeah. So that's how I care for myself. Also, I write and I organize. I like fun things. I organize events for people to come and enjoy themselves, and yeah.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Thank you guys and girls and gays and babes. Thank you so much to our panel, our first panel today. Like I said, the hottest panel I've ever moderated. I just would like to thank also the people who said something in the room, and those who wanted to say something. You can still tell us later. We just don't want to go in the time of like the rest of the program. And two things that I wanted to mention. One, individualism is a capitalist trope. So all of the things that we think about as love, as care, if ultimately they can't trickle down and can be shared, we need to, you need to open your world a little bit more and share. Lona is always calling me a community builder, which I take it, but more than anything, community is our political home. We don't belong to organizations, even if they trained you and gave you feminist language, like the community, the people you love, the people you care for, the feminists you organize with, the queers you party with, and all the wonderful things that happen. Those are the homes that we have to continue to nurture and to grow. And yeah, I wanted to end with a poem that is 3 lines. That's not from me, but it's from Gwendolyn Brooks. I found it in a book called Fugitive Feminism, which says, "We are each other's harvest, we are each other's business." So I don't want to hear those things of what? Gwendolyn Brooks. "We are each other's harvest, we are each other's business, we are each other's magnitude and bond." Thank you.